Look at these two dogs. Same breed, same name, but miles apart looks wise. One is athletic, sharp-featured, almost fox-like. The other has a head shaped like an egg and a body built like a barrel. So what exactly happened? Today we're going deep on one of the most dramatic physical transformations in dog breeding history, the English Bull Terrier. Welcome back. If you're new here, we cover the history of dog breeds, behavior, and the science behind what makes dogs tick. Today's video is one I've wanted to make for a while on one of my favorite breeds, but it's also a cautionary tale about what happens when aesthetics take over from function. Let's get into it. To understand where the Bull Terrier is today, you have to go back to early 1800s England, and it's not a pretty history. The breed traces its roots to the now extinct Old English Bulldog, crossed with early terrier breeds, most likely the White English Terrier, which is itself now extinct too. The goal wasn't to create a family pet we know today, but a dog for brutal blood sports of the era. These included bull baiting, bear baiting, and even dog fighting. Thankfully, this was completely outlawed in 1835, so the popularity fell sharply. The Old English Bulldog was powerful and tenacious, but it was slow and heavy. Breeders wanted something faster, more agile, and with the sharp reactivity of a terrier. The result was sometimes called the Bull and Terrier, a lean, muscular, feisty dog that could move quickly and hold its own in a pit. These early dogs looked nothing like the Bull Terrier we know today. They had long, flat skulls, strong athletic frames, deep chests, and almond-shaped eyes. They were medium-sized working dogs, typically weighing somewhere between 25 and 35 kilograms, and they were built entirely around function. If a dog couldn't perform, it wasn't bred. Even the Old English Bulldog was much more athletic, not the couch potatoes we see today more commonly. The pivotal point came in the 1850s, thanks to a Birmingham-based dog dealer named James Hinks. Hinks is the man most credited with turning the rough-fighting Bull and Terrier into a refined show dog, what we now recognize as the English Bull Terrier. Hinks crossed the existing Bull and Terrier types with the Dalmatian and possibly the English White Terrier, among others. His goal was elegance, for a cleaner, whiter, more pet-like, refined dog. Something that could win in a show, but also appear to the upper classes as more of a status symbol. The result was still a recognizably athletic dog. Hinks' Bull Terriers had flat, long heads with a slight slope, what breeders called a wedge shape when viewed from above. They were still muscular and well-proportioned. Contemporary prints and photographs from the 1860s and 1870s show dogs that look almost nothing like the modern Bull Terrier. They look lean, alert, and fast. These dogs were shown without the exaggerated features we associate with the breed today. The head, specifically, was long and flat-topped, not curved. The muzzle was strong but straight. It was a handsome, functional-looking animal which still kept some of its original traits and personality. So, when did the head start changing? The curved, egg-shaped head, called a Roman nose or down-face profile by fanciers, started emerging as a desirable trait somewhere in the late 1800s and early 1900s. Show judges started rewarding it. Breed standards began describing the ideal head as one that curved evenly from the top of the skull right down to the nose tip, with no flat planes, no stops, no angles. By the time the breed standard was formally codified in the early 20th century, this profile was the defining feature of the breed. Breeders chased it as a goal, each generation of pups getting closer and closer to the desired standard. Dogs with the most extreme downface won shows naturally, and then dogs that won shows got bred. And so, generation by generation, the skull shape drifted further and further away from what Hinks had originally produced. At the same time, the body was changing too. The modern Bull Terrier is noticeably more compact and barrel-chested than its ancestors. The eyes, once almond-shaped and dark, became small and deeply set, a consequence of the skull changes. The muzzle shortened relative to the skull, and this is where the story gets serious. The extreme skull shape that defines today's Bull Terrier isn't just cosmetic. Selective breeding for that down-face profile has compressed the skull in ways that create real health problems. Bull Terriers today have a significantly higher rate of congenital deafness than most breeds too. Studies suggest somewhere between 18 and 20% of Bull Terriers are affected to some degree. Researchers believe this is partly linked to the genetics behind their white coloring, but the narrowing of the skull and inner ear structure from selective breeding is also considered a contributing factor. The breed also suffers disproportionately from a condition called lethal acrodermatitis, a fatal genetic skin and immune disorder. Kidney disease is another common occurrence, and perhaps most visibly, the changes to skull structure have led to dental crowding and bite problems that the original dogs simply didn't have. There's also the matter of temperament. Early Bull Terriers were bred for aggression, that was the point. Modern breeding has softened this significantly, and today's Bull Terrier is generally described as affectionate, clownish, and loyal. But the exaggerated physical form has arguably come at the cost of overall robustness, very similar to many modern breeds. Today's Kennel Club registered Bull Terrier is a very specific-looking dog. The breed standard still calls for that unbroken downward curve from skull to nose, deep-set triangular eyes, a thick, muscular neck, and a compact, rounded body. It's an unmistakable silhouette, and it's deliberate. Some breeders are pushing back. There's growing conversation within Bull Terrier communities about health-first breeding, prioritizing dogs with fewer extreme features, better hearing, and cleaner genetics. The Kennel Club in the UK has introduced health screening requirements, and some breed clubs have updated guidance to discourage the most extreme head shapes. But it's slow progress. The egg-shaped head is the breed in the eyes of most judges, most buyers, and most breed enthusiasts. Changing that requires changing what wins in show rings, which requires changing what people value. And that takes generations in the best of times. The English Bull Terrier went from a working pit dog to an elegant gentleman's companion to a walking art project, and somewhere in that journey, health took a back seat to aesthetics. That's not a unique story in dog breeding. We've done similar things to pugs, bulldogs, German shepherds, and more. But the Bull Terrier might be the starkest visual example of just how dramatically a breed can change in under 200 years. If you want to see another breed transformation covered like this, drop it in the comments below. Give this a like if you found it interesting, subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you in the next one.